What's up guys, my name is Ace, and today I wanted to talk about the armor situation in the Blackout Battle Royale beta. As of right now, this is the biggest complaint that I'm seeing within the community, and it's my current biggest complaint as well with Blackout. Overall, I'm absolutely loving this game. I can't wait till it comes out. I'm completely addicted to it. But this is that one thing that I feel like they just don't have right at this point. And the solutions that they've implemented so far, I feel like they aren't enough, and I feel like they don't attack the root problem of armor. So today I wanted to go over what I feel the root problem is with the armor, as well as share a bunch of solutions I've seen in the community, a bunch of ideas that I have for solutions to this armor problem, and I want to kind of go through each one of those solutions, and basically just look at the pros, the cons, and the viability of those options, and hopefully at least keep the discussion going around armor so we can come up with the best solution possible that perhaps Treyarch would be willing to listen to. So first up, let's go over what I feel the actual problem is with armor. Personally, I've got no issue with armor being in the game. I think it should be in the game, and I'm actually fine with multiple tiers of armor as well. I think it's alright that we have a rare version of armor that protects you from headshots. That's totally fine by me. But the first issue I have with armor is the discrepancy between having no armor and having tier 2 or tier 3 armor. This discrepancy, in my opinion, is simply way too high. It shouldn't be taking roughly double the amount of damage to kill somebody that has tier 3 armor compared to somebody that has no armor. In my opinion, that's just way too high. Armor should be something that gives you a bit of a leg up in a gunfight and allows you to soak up a couple extra bullets or a few extra bullets depending on the tier of the armor. But it shouldn't be the thing that decides the majority of gunfights. As it is right now, it seems like that is a deciding factor on way too many gunfights that happen in this game. So that's my first issue with the armor. It's simply the discrepancy between having no armor and having armor equipped. And this leads to the second big problem I have with armor, and this is the fact that as you go through the match and you get kills, if you're actively seeking out fights, you're bound to lose your armor in fights. Even if you're winning those fights, you're going to be losing your armor. It's going to be damaged, it's going to be removed, and when you kill enemy players, assuming you're not hitting all of your shots in the head, you're also going to be breaking their armor so you don't have armor to loot. And therefore, this discourages people from going out and seeking kills because it's dangerous. You're going to lose your armor, and even if you win that fight, it just screws you over for the next fight. And it encourages people to camp to try and preserve their armor for the end game. This is backwards in my opinion. In a battle royale game, I feel like the people that are being aggressive and going out and getting the kills, assuming they're looting the bodies that they kill, I feel they should be getting more and more powerful throughout a match. That should be something that's incentivizing people to get into fights, is looting people so that they can make themselves more powerful for the end game. That makes for a much more enjoyable experience in my opinion, because the more people that are actively going out and looking for fights and not camping in a bathroom somewhere, generally the more enjoyable the game is. I think most people would agree that it's very annoying to play against people that are camping in bathrooms. It's not a very fun experience to be doing that when everybody's just playing hide and seek until they're absolutely forced to get into a gunfight. Now, if you want to play in that way and you want to camp in a bathroom and that's the playstyle that you choose, I think that's totally fine. I think everyone's entitled to play how they want to play. I just don't think the game should be encouraging and rewarding that playstyle. I think one of the trade-offs to camping like that is you don't get more powerful as the match goes on, whereas the people that are actively getting kills are getting more powerful, and that's something you have to deal with when you get to the end game situations. So I think for me at least, that's the real root of the problem with armor in this game currently. It's not only that the armor is extremely powerful, especially tier 2 and tier 3, it's that the more you get into fights, the more often you lose armor and the less likely you are to have armor, whereas the more you avoid fights, the more powerful you're going to be in relation to the people that are going out and getting fights. So doing things like reducing the number of tier 3 armor spawns, while it is nice and it is helpful, it doesn't attack the root problem with armor in my opinion. So let's go over some solutions. Keep in mind, I don't necessarily agree with a lot of these solutions, and I'll be talking about that. I mainly just want to go through a list of solutions that I've seen recommended, and share my thoughts on whether they would be good, bad, or even viable. So the first and one of the more basic solutions I've seen recommended is simply remove armor altogether. Make it so there's no armor in the game. And I personally think this is not a good solution, and it's also not a viable solution. Treyarch's definitely not going to be doing that. But just as an explanation, if you remove armor completely, the time to kill becomes too fast, in my opinion, the general time to kill, which will discourage people from moving around the map. Going out in the open without armor is very scary, and you could be picked off without even having time to get to cover pretty easily. Armor is one of those things that allows you to comfortably go out into the open and move around a little bit. Another really big issue with removing armor completely is it would make the skill gap way too high. And a battle royale game is meant to be accessible to a wide range of players with a wide range of skill levels and goals in a game. If everybody was on a level playing field all the time in a gunfight like that, the good players would completely decimate everybody else, and people that are just getting into the game for the first time, they would be very discouraged from playing this. For those players, getting armor in their hands is one of those things that can every once in a while give them that slight edge and level the playing field against somebody that might be a more skilled player that just doesn't have armor in that situation. Now, of course, there has to be a balance here. You don't want to turn away really good players, the players that invest the most time in the game, the influencers, so the streamers and YouTubers. You don't want to push them away by making it far too random and noob friendly. But at the same time, you have to make it accessible so that newer players can enjoy themselves with the game and have a good time. Having armor and having multiple tiers of armor is what makes this accessible and also addictive. RNG elements are one of the major reasons that Battle Royale games are so addictive, because every time you get into a game, you never know what you're going to get, and you get that little rush every time you find a level 2 or a level 3 armor. So while I don't agree with the current state of the armor in the game, I do feel it is an important aspect of Blackout. So in my mind, not a viable option to remove armor completely. Next up, one of the more surface level solutions to the armor problem that I've seen that I really like, that doesn't necessarily target the root cause of the armor issue in my mind, but it's still a great idea, is make it so tier 3 armor is only available in those supply crates that drop on the map. This way, you still have level 1 and level 2 armor that you can get excited about just finding randomly around the map, but for level 3 armor, if you want that headshot protection, you have to earn it, you have to work for it, and you have to actually fight over those crates. As it is right now, I don't see people going for those crates, at least not actively very often. If it happens to land next to somebody and it looks like it's a safe area, then yeah, they'll loot it. But I don't see people like actively keeping an eye up towards the sky, seeing those supply crates and trying their best to get there and fight over it. If that were the only source of tier 3 armor, I think that would be a much better way to handle it, and I also wouldn't feel so bad coming against somebody that has tier 3 armor, because I would know that he risked himself to get that, and that's totally fine by me. This brings us to another solution that I like, is maybe just make it so tier 3 armor is the same as tier 2 armor, but has that headshot protection. This means it wouldn't take quite as many shots as it currently does to take down a tier 3 armor user, but you would still have that benefit over tier 2 armor, and that headshot protection is always really nice. Again, this doesn't necessarily target the root problem with armor in my opinion, but it would be an improvement over the current system. Another recommendation I've seen is the ability to have armor-piercing rounds as an attachment. Personally, I don't think this would be a very good idea, at least not having them in the same state as multiplayer, where they like just instantly break armor and they basically ignore it completely so you can just completely melt people. I think we would then see an issue where armor-piercing rounds are way too powerful, and it would also lead to a lot of inconsistencies where when you have armor, you should feel a bit confident that you can soak up a few extra shots, and the armor-piercing rounds would just ignore that, and there'd be way too many inconsistencies, so I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think that's viable, but I did want to bring that up because I have seen a lot of people recommend that. Next up is a solution that I've thought of, which I will admit is not perfect, but I kind of like the sound of it. Maybe with some tweaking, it could work. This is allow you to take an extra armor that you can carry in your inventory, but make it so it takes up multiple slots depending on the tier. So if I want to take an extra tier 1 armor, aside from the one that's on my body, I want to put it in my inventory, maybe make it so that'll take up 2 of my inventory slots. So that means 2 less slots that I can have consumables and throwables in. If I want tier 2 armor, maybe make it so it takes 4 of those slots up. And if I want an extra tier 3 armor, make it so it takes like 6 of those slots up. It basically just loads up your inventory. That way, there would be a trade-off to carrying an extra armor, and it would be a noticeable trade-off, but it would also allow the players that want to go for kills and want to be actively engaging into gunfights, it would give them that ability to have that extra armor around for after their gunfight so they can move on to the next gunfight comfortably. In addition to this, when you kill other players, there's a chance that they would have a perfectly good armor on their body that you can also loot, which would target that root issue that I was mentioning earlier, where aggressive players are punished for getting into fights. Now, the one issue I see with this is we're getting pretty close to launch, and that's a pretty big change to be making. At least I feel it is. I'm not a game developer or anything. I don't know how difficult a change like that would be to make, but I'm not too sure how open Treyarch would be to making such a big change to your inventory system where you have one item that takes up multiple inventory slots. Another solution I have to offer for the armor issue that would actually target that root issue a bit more, and this one would be a lot easier to implement in my mind, is simply make it so the armor will last a whole lot longer, so it would actually last over multiple gunfights, but more bullet damage will be allowed to pass through the armor. As a result, even if you only hit the enemy in the body and he's got armor, you won't actually break his armor before you kill him, and then when you go and loot him, he will have an armor that's damaged, obviously, because you've been shooting it, and you can decide whether or not you want to swap your armor out with that armor for the next gunfight, depending on how much health it has left. This would make it so if you are actively seeking gunfights, you don't lose your armor in the first gunfight you get into, and then you're kind of screwed for the next one, and then the next one after that, because as you loot the bodies, their armor is broken and it's just gone. This would make it so you have to manage your armor wisely as you're looting the bodies. Of course, this is assuming we have the armor health bar that is going to be coming for launch, so you will be able to see how much health your armor has left. But as you're looting the body of someone you just killed, assuming they had armor, you can compare that to your armor and decide whether or not you want to swap that out. I think this is actually a pretty simple yet elegant solution to this armor problem. And out of all the solutions that I've seen so far that are meant to target that root issue with armor, I think this is the best and also the most viable to change. Of course though, I'd like to know in the comment section below, first off, what are your thoughts on armor in the current state of Blackout? Do you think it needs to change, or do you think it's fine as is? And second, what solution would you offer? Do you agree with any of the solutions I offered, especially that last one? I really personally like that last one, and if you like that as well, I'd appreciate if you shared that around a little bit. But if you don't agree with any of the solutions I offered, what solution would you offer to the armor problem? If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.